Thank you for watching. Here's my thoughts about an important subject. Why do we make things illegal? What things should we make illegal and not illegal? I'm thinking about this subject because of voter fraud. There's a corrupt politician recently who is claiming voter fraud never happens. It's a myth. And because it never happens, we should make it really easy for her to cheat. Maybe that's the only way she's going to win an election. She's not aware of her ever winning any election. She lost an election because the people in her state did not want her. Now the myth that she's the one that's purporting a myth, there is no voter suppression happening in the United States of America right now. And the Republican Party has never done that. It's the Democrat Party that was enacting the Jim Crow laws. The 13th and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution were responses to Democrat Party misbehavior, treating slaves like they weren't fully citizens, mistreating former slaves. So if there is any mythology, it is the false, baseless accusation of voter suppression. What are some of these supposed methods of voter suppression? Well, actual voter suppression has happened when there were taxes to vote, literacy requirements, and literacy requirements where corrupt test givers or test judges were counting people as illiterate who were literate. Maybe voting is important enough. We maybe should have some very small standards to make sure people, it's good to have voters who know what they're reading when they read the names or campaign literature. So that is how the Democrat Party in the past committed voter suppression. Is requiring identification to vote suppression? No! If you really think that, then you're a racist piece of crap who thinks black people are too stupid to be able to get a photo identification, apparently. That's the only reason it makes sense for me, if I'm trying to understand why somebody would think that it's somehow voter suppression or a bad thing if we require identification. Requiring voter identification is a good idea to limit fraud, to make it hard for people to commit fraud. Requiring people to actually show up at a polling place on election day. It's going to be harder for fraud to be committed if there's only one day we get to vote and you have to actually show up, unless you've got a really good reason, like you're going to be out of town. But just, I'm not going to feel like standing in line. Then if somebody who's not willing to stand in line to vote, maybe it's a good thing if they aren't voting. Voting is so important. We should do what we can to make fraud difficult, hard. Yep, so those are the supposed modern voter suppression. Let's have an identification so we make sure it's the person and that person's vote is not being stolen. You're actually in favor of voter suppression if people's votes don't get counted because their votes were stolen by people impersonating them. That would be actual suppression. If somebody's been impersonated and then they get a provisional ballot and that provisional ballot counts, their vote was diluted. It's not one man, one vote if, voter A is, according to the paperwork, already voted because fraudster A goes to the poll and says, I'm so-and-so, and then goes and votes for him, and then he has to vote by a provisional ballot. His vote got diluted. That's not one man, one vote. And it's not one man, one vote if it's easy to commit fraud, and there are fraudsters that are literally voting hundreds of times as hundreds of people. Or even if they vote twice, once as themselves and once as somebody else, that fraud is not one man, one vote. And one man, one vote is a beautiful, true, good slogan that some people use when they're talking about voting rights and what voting should be. Should we ever make something illegal even if it's not happening? So even if there's no voting fraud happening, even though we know that there is, Project Veritas got a sample ballot, a mail-in ballot for Eric Holder. They just walked up and said, "I'm Eric Holder," and they were given his ballot. But I have actually seen a person being interviewed on a news report who apparently didn't care or didn't know that it's bad to commit voter fraud, that the voter themselves is supposed to actually vote. And she filled out the ballot without talking to her daughter. She filled it out for her daughter and sent it in. I think she said there was more than one person she did that for. There's at least that one proven, documented, confessed to by a person who did not realize or care that she was doing something bad, example of voter fraud. Things should be illegal because they're bad to do, even if they've never happened. Even if it's never happened. No American has set off a nuclear bomb inside of America. Are we going to make that legal now because it's never happened? No. I mean, there have been tests in the middle of nowhere, but no, it's like no American has, set off a nuclear bomb in a populated area. Well, it should of course not be legal, but it's never happened. Well, see, that's bad logic. Even if voting fraud has never happened, even if it's never happened, it's still a very, very bad thing if the people's will is not implemented. If there's voter fraud, we're not getting as an election result what the people wanted. We're getting what the fraudsters wanted. Now, there are some corrupt politicians who are going to be the most likely fraudsters, and they're the ones that are going to want vote by mail 6 months before the election. So they'll have a lot of time to commit fraud. But if somebody's not planning to commit fraud, they should not want it to be easy to commit fraud. But since it's so important for our elections to reflect what the people actually want, and not what a group of fraudsters want, our system should be set up so it's hard for them to commit fraud. Even if it never has happened, but it has happened. Other examples. If there's a small town where there's never been a break-in, are you going to tell somebody, leave your door unlocked? There's never been a break-in in this town. Or would you say, you know what, you've got a good town there, nothing bad has happened, but maybe you should still sleep with a locked door so you're not the first person murdered in the middle of the night in their own house because the person breaks in and has the advantage because they've got surprise and they're awake at the start of the murderer's awake at the start of the encounter. All right, so, and I think I've made my point here. Yeah, thank you for watching. One man vote is the way it should be. We do not have one man, one vote with diluted votes because somebody votes twice when they didn't actually vote twice, but it was a fraudster and the actual voter. We do not have one man, one vote when people are you know, impersonating somebody else. And even if something has never happened that's bad, it's okay for us as a society to make the bad thing illegal and make it not easy to do the bad thing. Thank you for watching. You have a good day.